This is another variation of electric guitar. It's produced by the same company, Ibanez, as the one that I've looked at in the previous video. It's actually very similar. I'd probably say it's 90 to 95% similar in design and in most aspects as that guitar. This one is it's a slightly higher end, more advanced guitar, so it was more expensive to buy originally. I can't actually remember. I've owned this for over 20 years. I can't remember what I paid for it, but it's higher up in the model range, and it's got a couple of key features that guitar doesn't have, that I just want to show as an example of how different guitars can have different features on and different things for you to use. To begin with, visually, just to look at the guitar, everything's the same: head, neck, body, the shape of it, the cutaways. It looks like it's got the same electronic setup for the pickups and the things that it needs to make it sound. Just one difference, and this is purely visual. If you look at the fretboard, the fingerboard, don't have the dot markings on this guitar. Instead, it's got these jagged, I think the company calls them shark tooth inlays on the neck for the position markers for the frets. What's different about it? The first thing is the neck. I actually didn't, I don't think I did on the last video. I don't think I showed you the side profile of the neck. One thing on this particular neck, on this range of guitars, is the necks are designed to be super thin in profile. So if you have a look at the side profile of the neck, if I can try and show it that way, i.e. how thin and how fat the neck is that way, you should be able to see, if you look, that's really thin. It's almost like if you're used to playing an acoustic guitar or a guitar that's got a thick neck, it's quite unusual to jump on a guitar of this style, because it almost feels like you're playing nothing in your hand. It's super easy to play, and that's the reason for it. The second thing is the bridge. On the other guitar, on that guitar that I did the other video on, it's got what is called a fixed bridge. So the bridge, where the strings meet the guitar, that is fixed directly to the body of the guitar, so that the tension of the strings is always the same. The only way that I can adjust the tension of the strings is by the tuning pegs, which is what you use to tune the guitar. And that's quite normal, there's no problem with that. Some guitars are designed that way, some guitars are designed this way. The difference here is I've got what's called a floating bridge, or some people call it a tremolo system, either or. With this little guy attached, that's called a tremolo arm. The slang term for it is a whammy bar. Okay, so the bridge design is different. It's actually a lot more complicated. It's a lot more difficult to set up. So normally speaking, I would say a guitar with one of these type of bridge designs, a floating bridge, not a fixed bridge, is probably better suited to a player with a little bit more experience of at least tuning and setting up your guitar, because it can be a little bit more complicated to set up and just get just so and keep in tune. I'll show you why that is. But first, why would I not want to have my bridge fixed to my guitar? Why would I want it to be, in this case, floating, and what's the point of this thing? It's just going to get in the way, and if I'm not careful I'm going to spark my hand on it. The reason is, one of the techniques when you're playing a guitar, I'll plug it in actually in a second, you'll be able to see it, you'll be able to hear it a bit more clearly. One of the techniques when you're playing a guitar is, you may or may not have done this yet, is bending a string. So if I play a note on a string, I can just push that note up and bend the pitch as far as I want to stretch it and raise the pitch of the note. There's a number of reasons I might want to do that. It might be for stylistic reasons, it might sound cool, but that's the starting point of the history of where this thing comes from. Now I can do that, I can bend a note on a string, if I do that more subtly, and again I'll probably be better off showing it plugged in, I'll do it in a second, I can bend it slightly and just bend it very slightly up and down. That technique is called vibrato. So I'm giving it sort of a wavering up and down type effect that you probably don't want to use it for every single note, but it can give you a little bit of flavour whilst you're playing. Now if you're playing just one note, that's grand, it's easy to do, I can push that note up and down. If I'm playing a chord, there's an A minor, if I wanted to achieve the same effect using a chord, I really can't do it, because I can try and move all the notes up and down at the same time, but even then, this is an open root chord, it's never going to work, because I've still got, for example, my open A string, I can't do anything with that because I'm not even touching it, so the whole chord is going to sound a bit out of tune, and it's not going to, I'm not going to be able to do it. With this device, this allows me to adjust the tension on the strings by using this bar, the tremolo arm, the whammy bar, what you want to call it. So by moving this bar, and I don't move it like that side to side, the action to use this bar is either to press it down towards the guitar or pull it up away from the guitar. I can play a chord, and I can adjust the I can adjust the pitch of all the notes in the chord at once. That was where the idea came from. This design has been developed over the years. The original ones, like with any designs, they did the job basically, but they had a few problems with them. One of the big problems was that obviously we're adjusting the tension on the string, so we might end up having problems with the tuning of the guitar because we're slackening the strings and retightening them. Just by doing that, it might knock the strings out of tune. In the early days, these devices were set up so that you could only really push down on the bar, so you could only lower the pitch of the strings by slackening them. There was no way to really raise the pitch of the strings, because it wasn't designed that way. It was solid so that you couldn't pull it up, or you could pull it up a tiny little bit just by forcing the issue, but mainly it was just so you could just press it down with a little bit of effort, trying to not to put your strings out of tune and make a vibrato sort of effect like that. The design, the development has come on a long way over the years, to the point where, as I say, this is quite an old guitar. It's over 20. I've owned it over 20 years. It's probably 30 odd years old, this. But the design on this particular bridge has got a couple of key features that help prevent those problems, and that's where this guitar differs from the previous one. Start up at this end. Okay, so we're used to having the bridge here. You can hopefully see. I'll try and do a close up on the bridge. We've actually got some metal gizmos on there, like little clamps with bolts on, sat on top of the strings. There's a reason for that. The reason is that once I've tuned the guitar, I clamp those down, and that stops the strings from moving in any way up at the top end of the guitar. Once I've clamped these down, these tuning pegs, tuners, do nothing, because the strings are clamped here and they will not move. The same at the bottom end of the guitar. If you can see it, normally used to feed in the strings through. They have a ball on the end of the guitar. On the other one, it went through from the back, and then we just feed the string up. On this design, I actually need to cut the balls off the end of the strings and clamp them physically using a tool into here, so that at both ends they're securely clamped into the guitar. Because I can no longer use the tuning pegs because it's clamped up at the top, I've got these little dials on here, and what they do, allow me to do a little bit of fine tuning, so that once it's set, if for whatever reason a string or some strings end up out of tune, it may be that I've got new strings on, they stretch a little bit, need a little bit of adjustment. It may be that I've took the guitar to go and play at a gig or at a friend's house. Temperature's different, so the temperature, obviously the strings stretch and contract, might be different. So even without having access to the normal tuning pegs, this allows me to be able to do some fine tuning just to make sure I can just ease the strings into tune. So how does this thing work? Obviously it's on a pivot, it's not fixed to the guitar, so what's the system, how does it work? On the front of the guitar here there's a couple of bolts, and that basically is a pivot point. This whole thing swings up and down on these two bolts, and whenever I move that lever, this entire bridge moves up and down, slackening or tightening the tension on the strings. It works by the string tension being balanced out against some springs on the back of the guitar. So if I turn it around, I'll have to take the cover off to show you. On the back of the guitar, inside here, you can see there's 3 strings. These are screwed, bolted to the guitar at this end, and at this end they connect to the bridge. So the tension on my strings, when I've tuned them up to pitch, are fighting against these springs, and they find a point of balance where they sat, where I want them to be in tune by tuning them, and those springs, because springs move, allow me to move the bridge up and down. So that's how the thing works. It's quite a complicated system, but having all these little extra features does help me to be able to maintain the tuning and the pitch on the guitar, rather than the earlier systems that some of them did tend to struggle a little bit in that way. As an example, I mean really for the people that I'm working with in my face-to-face lessons in the group, we've got a guitar, a Squire Stratocaster guitar, which is a great guitar. We all love playing it, everyone enjoys it. It has a tremolo system on, but it's one of the more basic designs where really you can only push it down, and you wouldn't want to really be too aggressive with it because it doesn't have these locking systems that enable the strings to stay in tune. So I mentioned this guitar was, or this model, this range of guitar was originally designed and intended for rock guitar, metal guitar, and all the shenanigans that go with that. A lot of the fast shredding and showing off type playing and things like that, which I'm totally not going to do now. And the facilities that this type of tremolo system offers you enables you to do all kinds of things that you wouldn't normally be able to do. So just really quick, I'm going to plug it in so that you can hear the example of what it does and how far you can actually take it with this. Again, I'm plugging in first, and I'm just going to switch now. So I'm on, got some volume there. So just on a nice clean sound. Again, I'll play let's play a G chord. So I can play a chord, a full chord across all my strings there. This is a G bar chord. I can use this arm to apply my subtle tremolo effects. Do that with any chord, A minor. C. I can vary the speed of that, whatever I want it to be. I was doing it like quite fast, I thought, then I can go. So that's basically how the reason for it coming into being, so that we could do that. Once we got the more advanced features like the locking bolts and things like that, and the ability to raise the pitch, so as well as being able to lower the pitch on this system, I can raise the pitch as well. I'm barely even touching it there. I can go right down or quite a long way up, depending on how far I want to go and what effect I'm looking for. With the rock and the metal players, they use that to the absolute extremes. One of the techniques was called dive bomb. You may have heard of it, you may not have heard it, and basically what you're doing there is taking the strings down so they're literally completely slack. So from an A chord, I can push that right down, and literally the strings, I can put my fingers under those strings, it's so slack, but then I can release it and I'm still in tune without the strings going out of tune. That sounded a bit rubbish because obviously when you're playing the rock and metal stuff you tend to have a different sound on the amp, distortion sound, and it sounds a lot different and more impressive. So again, I don't want to get into playing a lot of showy stuff, but just sort of to give you an example of the reason why people wanted to do this. I put the sound onto a distorted sound. Use the same sort of effect with the bar, so I think I'm just going to play an E string now, and I'm going to drop the bar right down, and that's a basic dive bomb. So that was just an E string. I can do that on any of the notes. I can play any note I want. Drop it right down into nothing. Also, like I said, as well as being able to drop the notes, you can pull them up as well. So if I want to, a popular thing is to maybe play a harmonic and pull that up as far as you want to go. So that's the floating tremolo system with the locking devices on. And also, going back, the other difference with this guitar is a slim neck for fast playing. Other than that, it's very, very similar to the other guitar. Just a couple of extra features that let you do a couple of extra things.